Be in the start as high as you can in the right position. After that, unfortunately, you have to top up more than the others when they're going. That means that you're going to be catching or having other guys coming past you and passing you with hotter gliders than you through your task. Understand that, accept that. It's always shit when you're in a race and someone's passing you. If you're in a running race and some guy comes past you and he looks much fitter than you, and fresher than you, that's not very nice. You don't feel good. But you have to accept that with your PE glider, that you're going to be slower than the others. That's it. Be comfortable with your gliders. I don't encourage any of you to upgrade your gliders to a hotter glider for performance. You must stay with what you're comfortable with. I've just gone from my CCC. I've owned 5 different gliders in the last 2 years, 2 Enzo 3s, an Evox, and now I'm on a D glider again, a brand new one from MacPara, and it's sweet and I love it, and her and I are making love in the air, and it's beautiful. Be completely comfortable with your glider on all conditions and all steps of the speed bar. Be really comfortable to be able to fly your glider all the time at all speeds and in all conditions. If you're not, you're flying a too hot glider, and don't go for that hot performance stuff. Everyone is tempted. Sabi was telling me, yeah, shall I, my Delta 4, what, it's just a C, and we're all hungry for more performance. Don't do it. Stay with something that you're comfortable with. Remember the plastic gun. Okay. Right, we're talking a lot here. Now, from takeoff, I want to tell you something really important. My head does not do good for me if I take off and I go down, even a few meters below the takeoff. I want to take off and I go immediately up. And I use a very simple technique to do that. I look before I'm going to take off, at the moment before I'm going to take off, even if there's pressure from people behind me to go, 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 and they're pushing you and whatever, I don't take off unless there's a sign of something going up in front of me. And I'm going to be taking off and going up. It's a trick I learned long ago, and it's one I really, really believe in. If you are down below takeoff for 20 minutes or half an hour before you get started, there's something going on in your brain saying, oh, you're so bad, why couldn't you get up from the beginning, and this and that, and whatever, and you are fighting with yourself. So be sure to know that when you're going to take off, you're taking off, and you've got a plan that you're going up. That's something I believe in. And once you're up, you get up to the very top. Test the top from the beginning. Nice weather for flying. And make sure that you get as absolutely high as I say before the start. Okay? So the takeoff is very important. The timing of the takeoff, how long you're going to be there, that you're ready, that you're fit, you've got all your stuff together, you've checked your leg straps, you don't want to leave them closed, and all this kind of thing. Make sure it all is together. Moving on now, sorry. The speed versus getting there. I'm going to show you guys the typical graph of beginner paraglider competition pilots. Really good on the first thermal. Then, where the race is on, we're going racing. We're on our way. The next thermal, yeah. Okay, guys are going. I'm going with them. Yeah, doing good. Go racing. Oh shit, I'm getting too low. I've landed. The graph, you're laughing. It sounds like it's happened to you before, right? Don't make the mistake of going up, and the next one a little bit less, the next one a little bit less. Use every thermal to the top. Get high, stay high. It's a race versus getting to goal. What's more important? Not being an idiot like me and cooking it at the end when you do really great, and right at the end you're racing too much, but 7 kilometers back you left a nice 2 to 3 meter thermal that would have taken you to goal. Okay? These guys yesterday pushed to goal, sorry, not you, yeah, just 50 meters above the goal, and he said, yeah, we made it in, that's no problem. It's too stressful for me. When your instrument says final glide to goal, don't go there if you are new to paragliding with less than 2 to 3 to 400 meters extra. Okay? Recently, here, we had the task 2 days ago, I think, to go. I left with 460 kilometers extra. That's what I had. Great. Fantastic. That's the one where we turned a bit into the wind, got a lot of climb, and I watched guys going low, low, low. I wasn't having any of that. Go up. up high, and I got to go, and I had 160 meters left. So I lost 300 meters on what it told me that I had. I should have an extra 300 in the bank, but I didn't. Okay, so I lost 300 meters. Don't go for goal until you are going to make it over goal. On your final glide, you are doing much better, flying really fast by climbing in the stronger stuff, and then going on speed bar. Yesterday morning, I had a chat with the constructor of my new glider, and I asked him, where on the speed bar would you be? He said, don't be pulling to pulling. There you are losing. Leave 2 centimeter gap at least, and of course, a little bit, the first half of your speed bar. There you can be. If you're not sure you're going to make it to something, your most efficient glide is where, guys?
3.
Just on trim. Exactly, trim. On trim.
It depends on wind.
It depends on your wing, depends on your wind speed, depends on if you're going into wind. There are a lot of factors. Okay? But in general, if you want to reach something, and you want to float there, being on trim and hardly being on your back risers. And by the way, if you are not flying on your back risers and you are new to competition flying, there's something you have to learn. You have to learn to fly on your back risers. And the most efficiently our gliders can fly, it's with 0 inputs. Do nothing to them. Just let them fly. And if you are finding that you are coming down on your back risers and you're like holding them and yeah, oh shit, baby Jesus, if you exist, get me through this. And you're too much. Just learn how to just for a bit of pressure. Don't be pulling and holding if you can help it. Try not to give any input on your glider. Learn how to thermal on the speed bar with the back risers. If you're not doing that, learn how to do this. Why would you want to thermal with the speed bar?
Why? Good question.
Why? Because you cover much more of the sky. If you're in lighter lift and you're not sure how to find it, you want to be on the speed bar, the back risers, to look and craft across the sky. Okay. So different amounts of lift, you want to be on different things. Tom Payne was telling me in his talk this morning, Kriegel uses the whole speed range on his paraglider through the entire speed range in a thermal. He will use from full speed bar to on the stall point of his glider. It's unbelievable, isn't it, for you and me? I can't fly like that, but Kriegel can. His balls are bigger than my head. Okay? So you have to be able to be comfortable with what you're doing, do everything in your range, but I do encourage you to, when the thermal is very light, for example, my constructor told me, use an inner brake and the outer back riser when thermaling, in light lift. And I tried it yesterday. Well, it was working better than I thought. I thought, if I give a little bit of brake, it can't harm, makes a difference. Okay? Think about all these things. Learn, if you want to further yourself outside of competition or even in the next days, learn how to thermal on the back risers. You'll be extremely impressed that in light lift, you can thermal on the back risers and you'll think, yes, I never thought about this before, but it's working quite well. When you are arriving at a thermal, you are now seeing guys thermaling. Often we are really high and we see guys thermaling that are, you think that they're going to kiss the ground and they're much lower than you and you're in pole position, you're in a really good position. The guys are flying and you think, fuck, you guys have eaten you up. By the time you reach them and they've hit the good thermal, they're up there and you arrive below them. Okay.
I have a question about this. You said about the back riser climbing, but is it true that you're supposed to be in a minimum sync while thermaling?
Okay, thank you very much for bringing that up. When you are thermaling, you don't worry about the sync of your glider when you are in stronger thermal. How fast are we sinking? Let's say we sink with 1.5 meters a second. So we need a 1.5 meter lift to be doing 0. Okay? Yesterday I was tuning forever in 0,5s, and 0,8s, and 0,3s, and 1,2 was really good. I felt like I was going to go to space in 1,2 later because the day just got stable around Bitola. It was extremely difficult to even put some more in. But when you find a 3 and a 4 and a 5 and a 6 and a 7, when you are in a 5 or 6 meter a second thermal, dude, if you are not spiraling your glider in that thermal, you're doing something wrong. That means you're leaning over as much as you can. This hand is going down as if you want to stall that wingtip, but you don't stall the wingtip. You go
Just
slow.
to be clear with my question, once you want to stay in a position whether it's very light or maybe medium.
Okay.
Many gliders, I don't know about CCC, but many gliders, there is a difference between trim speed and minimum sink, which is a little bit engaged with the brakes.
Exactly.
So I'm saying to myself, even if I'm thermally, and it's not so strong, like in saying that I have to spiral up. So maybe a little bit engaged with both of the brakes to get this minimum sink advantage compared to the back riser that you mentioned. You said back riser, but you cannot get minimum sink because you don't slow yourself down.
So I'm going to tell you that your argument and your question and everything is talking about really fine stuff. I'm talking about something bigger, which is involving, more important for me, is to find the lift and to use the lift. To find the core of the thermal. Because you're going to win the competition, you're going to win your category or whatever by finding the core of the thermal. So when you're in extremely light stuff, and like yesterday, the day actually dies, you can do what you want, you can hope and pray, you're only going to make it so far, and it's going to be over for you. You can hope that you can use this really light stuff to waft forward. I'm not a pilot like that. I like to fly in stronger conditions, and I like to fly where the thermals are good enough to keep you up and make you fly far. All right. So let's say you're finding a thermal, you want to turn in that thermal as efficiently as you can. The stronger the thermal, the tighter you turn. And if you are not turning extremely tightly to stay in a core, anything more than 2 to 3 meters a second, you must be leaning over as much as you can. This hand must come down and the outer hand must really be helping. Remember, I'm not going to teach you guys how to thermal here today, but remember there's this axis, and your body. And all three of them are independent of one another. So when you are active flying, you are moving your body over. Now I fly a Race 4 Genie harness. It's extremely stable. It's a big thing. I don't have to move my body around as much as I used to in past harnesses. You can just lean over and this thing is fine like that. You don't have to move your body a lot. In the past, I used to move my body much more actively. But your inner hand and your outer hand are definitely playing a part. More important than anything else are the radar eyes. Okay, if I teach you one thing here today, it's to observe, and observe. Observe other people around you, who's going up and who's going up faster. So you have to look at orange glider, blue glider, red glider, and you look around you, and when the one has gone up relative to the other, you want to move over to that way. You also don't want to make the mistake of yo-yo forward and back between cores. But there's two groups of guys going up, and you're in the one, and you think, oh, the other one's working better. Oh, I'll go over there, and I come back here. And the guys who you were with before, they've completely eaten you up. So sometimes you have to be happy with the food you get on your plate. Be happy with the thermal you've got and stay in it. If you can clearly see that close to you and within reach, others are going up much better than you, then you're allowed to move over to the other. But generally, I don't advise you guys, when you find good lift, to be changing your mind. Indecision in our sport is mega dangerous for going down. So when you're undecided, recently in Spain, I was at the Spanish Nationals and I fucked up the last task, again racing too much, 154 kilometer task, just over, 3 hours, and we were racing. I was in 8th place and I landed 4 kilometers short of goal because I did a yo-yo. Because here it's working well, those guys are just climbing, and as I did, and I started to climb with them, oh, these guys are going up much better, I'll just go back to them. Oh shit, finished. Down. Don't do it. Yeah.
Do you have any recommendations how to judge distances between thermals? Because
very good question.
I always fuck this up. Maybe I should do live tracking or something.
Very good question. I'll ask Tim to answer that.
No.
Okay. So into wind and downwind are two very big differences. What you want to do, yesterday I was attacking properly when I could get going. In fact, yesterday, I'll just explain my task a little bit yesterday. Too late to take off, so I didn't get to the lead gable to get going. So a lot of guys were over my head and going for the first turn point. Of course, as the start opened, you have to be in whichever position you are. If the start opens and you are not high enough and you're in climb, carry on climbing. Carry on climbing, even if you leave everybody else behind you. Why? Because your best attack position, if I teach you a second thing here today, your best attack position with your radar eyes is a bunch of people ahead of you, going towards the task, and below you. That's what you want. You want at least 1 or 2 or 3, and the best is to have different people at different heights, nicely spread out, well ahead of you. But we can't plan. We can't organize this every time. That's impossible. We call it hawking, being behind people. So sometimes if people leave a thermal early and they're going, remember, the guy leaves, the next guy leaves, the next guy leaves, the next guy leaves. Sometimes it's your turn to leave too if you want to stay with them. But you have to ask yourself, how strong is the thermal I'm in? Is it worth staying in it, or is it worth going? Okay, I'll answer your question in a moment. Eh? So you have to ask yourself, when is it time to go, and when is it time to carry on topping up? Remember what I told you? Get high, stay high. Never leave a thermal unless if it's a good one and you're going up. Rather take it to the very top and then go. Even if others have left earlier, when you leave a thermal and you just go a little bit to the side, if you see people going out of a thermal and they're sinking like a stone, stay in the thermal. It's even more reason for you to stay in the thermal and slow down. I talk about the handbrake. Click, 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 click. Yesterday, near the end there, from really good conditions everywhere to going to the Bitula area, you have to click, 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 click your handbrake. You have to be able to slow down at times. You can't just be in race mode all the time. It's time to go faster, there's times to go slower. And there's times to top up higher. They speak of the thirds of the height. Let's say we've got 1,000 meters above the ground that you can work with in a day. 300 meters, you're in the danger zone down there. The next 300 meters, you are in a possible climb. Once you get to that 300 meters above the ground, you're starting to go into a really dangerous place, because when the feet are on the ground, you're crying and eating yourself at night. So stay there, and when you're at the really top, if you're up at that cloud base, really high up, and everybody else is down, there's no use in racing until you see a sign. The sign that someone or somewhere, someone is going up. You can fly like the Brazilians who are flying the world records. You're always snaking through the sky to look where the lift is. Okay, if you are not sure. But you must go with a plan. Don't waste time. Know where the point is that you're going next. There's no use in going backwards. Hardly ever. Only reason you go backwards is if you've made a mistake by leaving a thermal and you start going and your radar eyes in the back of your head, because they have to work, and you look back and you see that the guys are really start climbing. You made a mistake by leaving the thermal, but it's better then to immediately turn around, come back, and get that big stuff that they've suddenly found again and go up to the top. Okay, so get high, stay high as best you can. Now I'll answer your question. If the next lift, the guys are climbing up nicely in front of you, but there's a headwind coming towards you, be very careful, because you might not reach that. If, for example, yesterday, where it's a nice downwind and I'm doing 60, 62 k's an hour, that's the top speed I'm getting, but if I'm having to touch my brakes, I slow down to 45, then I'm up to 60 again, and that's a good movement. I'm moving nicely. Then the guys can be far away, and I can reach them. But I have to fly very efficiently to them, and I don't want to have massive sink in that way. So, observation, observation, observation. Observing every time the guys who are going out of the thermals and what they're doing, how fast are they sinking or climbing. If you are going to goal, you've got 10 kilometers to goal, and there's a lot of guys ahead of you towards goal, you have to observe how they are going towards goal. Did the guy who leave 3-4 minutes ago, how high is he now? If he's still the same height, fuck go. You've got that same air. Okay. But if people leave a thermal, as I say, and they sink like a stone, don't leave a thermal. Stay there. Yesterday, before I went out in the valley for the first turn point, after start, I changed my mind and I came back to the mountain because I saw everybody going down. And I like it. Everybody sinks. And I make it to go first. Alone. That's great. That's it. But it's not really going to happen like that in such competition. So you can just hope for the best. You can hope that you can use the thermal efficiently to the top, and you can go and you can join the next ones. So we are into wind, playing a dangerous game. Downwind, we're doing much better. If you are coming to a waypoint, it's 1 kilometer from you, and you're seeing it clocking down, and you're excited to get that next waypoint, but you've got a big thermal in front of you. Do you turn in it or do you not turn in it?
Depends on the wind direction.
Exactly. Depends on the wind direction. If you've got a strong headwind and you're coming to that thermal, you might want to just do the lefts and rights in that thermal, go for the waypoint and come back. But many people make the mistake, and it's their fault, to be too keen on the waypoint and to not go using strong, good lift. If you find good, strong lift, turn in it. Okay? You rather, yes please.
It depends on how close you are to that waypoint. If it's taking you away from the waypoint, fly through it, tag, come back to it.
Definitely. So there I agree with you, Tim, and I'm glad you picked me out on that. You want to be able to think clearly. Don't say, okay, there's a lot of guys climbing here, I have to get this waypoint that's here. No, you're making a mistake. Before, when you saw that guys were climbing, go through that, take the waypoint, come back and carry on. Again, it depends on the wind direction and strength. If you can thermal, let's say the wind is blowing from my back this way now, and there's a waypoint. The best you can do, and the next waypoint is back here, the best you can do is climb in the direction of the wind. Coming back into wind, and let's talk about a 20 kilometer an hour wind, you want to turn 360s as little as possible. So on your way to a waypoint, and think about this when you see the task, you think about the day, look at our tasks in the last days, you see the wind direction. Yesterday it was mega important that our first turn point, which was over Krushevo town, that we had to push to it and get it as quick as possible, because everything else was downwind, right? So after that it's easy. But you have to get that one and not land. Okay, so you've got a lot of shit going through your head. Whoa, which way and what? It's a lot of technical stuff here, guys. It's not easy. But rather slowly and gently make it towards goal than trying to race too much. If I take one thing out of your head, it's the plastic cup. Take it easy, make it to goal. It feels a whole lot better to drink that nice cold beer than standing in the middle of a hot field in the middle of nowhere and beating yourself up because you were racing too much, like I often do. Yes, Daniel.
I have a question. Let's turn back to the situation in which you are in a thermal, and some of the guys left the thermal and they seem like stone. I am still climbing, okay? I'm staying in the thermal, and I just have to go because the thermal ends up, or I'm in the cloud base. Should I go exactly in the direction where they went, or should I have a slight left or right?
What do you think?
I don't know, that's why I'm asking.
Okay, Tim's making all sorts of,
Yeah.
he's like that little kid in the class. Speed!
That's a beauty because
That's a beauty.
you do not want to follow someone that's sinking. So I mean I've seen so much the gaggle just flies and they all fly and follow each other and they all go zhoo, and I go, yes, we're racing. I've got to stay with them. I've got to leave, but I go off at 45 degrees. I find it. I stay in the lift a little longer. All of a sudden, I'm 100 meters higher than them. I didn't do any more turning really. I didn't, so it's just like I'm just cruising along there. So just do something different. Don't follow blindly.
If I can just add to what you're saying, be allergic to the direction that people are going when they are dropping down. Go like, oh fuck, I'm not going there.
Yeah.
Go away. Force yourself to go away. You don't want to go away because you want to follow the people. You're a sheep. You're going to go with them, but you want to go away from guys who are sinking like stones. If you, yeah, 1 second. First, I'm going to answer and keep your questions, guys. So very, very good question there, Daniel. It's like the thermal, or even when you are flying along. Remember the radar eyes? These ones here are looking at the people who are there next to you too. Red glider, blue glider, and this starts to happen. Where do you want to be? You want to start to move over this way. By not forcibly turning on your brakes. See you later, Bobo. And you want to be lightly on the back riser and your bit of weight shift, and you want to move over that way. Now all of a sudden this guy climbs like crazy, and you think, oh, awesome. And then he starts sinking like crazy. And you're like focused on this guy, but you haven't looked at the blue glider who's actually found the core, and he's up there now. You're talking about the yo-yo again, but go where it's going up. Okay, without trying to yo-yo. How do you see that blue glider going up? You use the radar eyes back here. You must be looking around you. You must be looking at who was low and who was climbing up and where they are going. You have to observe all of this, the big picture. You know, when you ride a motorcycle, you've got the soft focus. You must have a soft focus in this game to be good at it. And you have to be able to look, like you said, Cornell, further than you think you need to. If you're going downwind towards a task, and you see one guy, you think, fuck, he's already picking the cherries out of the trees there. He's already on the ground, and he starts to take something proper. There's your sign. There's your sign. The questions quickly, and then I'm going to talk about signs. You know?
So I want to use a little bit yesterday test because probably fresh in everybody's mind. So I went to the first point in the flat. I think the second point was in the north in the mountain. So we have a little bit on the flat and then up close to the launch or the LZ or something. I have difficulties here identifying, is it safer to be on the flat or in the mountain? So I was more or less alone. I saw people climbing very far away. I didn't have the confidence. I don't know.
That's good.
Because
That's good that you don't.
So I basically went back to the mountain here. And I have to grab forever, and it was extremely difficult because the wind was also, I think, too north, so it was not hitting. And when I was struggling, I saw people in the flat going up like crazy. But when I was, but the flat has much less trigger, much less how do you call triggers? Or the triggers are not so fixed; they move. I had the thought that in the mountain, you say, okay, the wind comes here, and the top of this hill, there's probably something. So how do you identify, without having gliders around you, because that's too easy, when it's favorable, the flat, when it's favorable to be safe in the mountain?
That's a very big question.
And don't
That's
come,
like,
okay, I see gliders going up with
or
me,
down?
because that doesn't count.
That's, so that's extremely difficult to judge. That's extremely difficult. Firstly, I want to make a comment about yesterday's task. Yesterday's beginning task after the start and the first waypoint, to come back to the first, that was about as technical and difficult as it can ever be in a competition. Okay, that was extremely difficult. Anyone here in this room that managed to get that turn point that was by Khrushchev and survive it to carry on was doing well. Okay, so you can give yourselves a pat on the back if you did that. If you made it a goal and in 30th place yesterday, that's bloody fantastic. You managed to do something really good. It was very, very difficult yesterday. But, as I said, when your feet are on the ground, even after 15 minutes of starting the task, that's when your fun's over for the day. You may as well go and roll yourself a fat one and drink some beers and go and cry to your wife or whoever you've got back home. But that's it, okay? You don't be on the ground. So yesterday, we had racing, but it's better to be up than to be on the ground. Okay, so...
Can I add something to that?
Join me up here in number one position. Come on.
Oh,
Come
jeez.
on over here.
If in the absence of any other information or any other thoughts as to what might be best, maybe take the course line because it gets you in the direction of where you need to go.
Yeah. I'll repeat it. You speak up.
In the absence of any other information about where might be best to climb, if you've got nothing to go on, think about you're flying a task, so why not fly the course line?
Absolutely.
You're going in the right direction and you might find something.
Yeah. Remember, if I may, remember where you are. You're next. Remember where you are having to go, guys. Don't forget, you've got that instrument, you must know it, and it's showing you where you want to be going. As you say, yes, please, Tim.
Yeah, can I also add something? I've got no shame in saying I couldn't pick that either. You know, it's really, really hard. So it's like, then, you know, you've got 130 other pilots in the air. You've got a lot of input there somewhere. You know, yeah, I may have been up with the leaders, all that sort of stuff, but I surround myself with those leaders. I don't race off on my own. I'll split the difference. I'll go up the tree line. I'll You know, I've got options. If something's all of a sudden working one way or the other, I'm not too far away. So a little bit of insurance in that regard. Yeah, following the course line is an option, but there's a lot of options. So don't limit yourself.
Yeah.
I think you've got people in a race, you've got people for your support. So,
as Tim says, rather be with company.
yeah.
Don't go it alone. Guys,
If that means you're waiting a little bit, there's people behind you, slow down. You've got a better glide, do what you need to do. Stay in that thermal a bit longer. You've got that advantage. So just don't stress
sometimes
it.
waiting for guys to catch you. Yesterday there was a Latvian pilot who was on a red leopard ahead of me just before and he should have just stayed a little bit, then I caught him, because 2 is much more powerful than 1 in the sky. So even if you have one other glider close to you, and don't hope and pray, because everyone's doing their own thing, but when somebody's coming your way and you're in light stuff and you're thinking, oh, don't at that moment think, I'm going to beat this guy to goal. There's still 40 Ks from goal. Let the guy come to you. Then
Work
you
together.
two of you. Because as he arrives at you, the next thing he starts to climb really well and he starts thermaling. And bingo, you were just out of the thermal in the shitty light stuff that you were surviving off. And you move his way and suddenly you have success. And even if he's eaten you on that one little move, don't be worried about that kind of stuff. More important is survival in this game, getting high, staying off the ground, and going nicely to goal. Umut, you've been such a patient boy, you're going to get a chocolate afterwards.
So I have 2 questions. One was the thermal, leaving the thermal. If the people were sinking like a stone, is it not true that different points of the thermal, the sink rate is quite different, and mostly below the mushroom, if you just live there, it is unbelievable sinking. In that case, just carry to the top so that the thermal spits you out of the way in every direction. If it's windy, then downwards, wind side. This is the first question.
Okay, so that's a very complex question, of course, because thermals are not all the same. They're all sometimes different. In the last days, we've seen some pretty nice big thermals with lots of area where it's all lifting. What you have to do is, again, the radar eyes, looking at which guys are going up where and trying to constantly, in your thermal, remember, if I haven't said this, I mean it. When you start thermaling in one direction, you carry on in that direction. A very big bad thing to do is starting and then making an S. You have moved completely away from where the good lift is. So start in one direction and carry on in one direction. I just want to say one more thing about thermaling. It's the snail you have to do. You find a good core like this and you lose it. Bigger circles. You find it, you make bigger and smaller. That's the best way to thermal. Okay? Don't, oh, okay, I've lost it, and go. No. You have to test. Okay? If you